Thanks for taking the time to watch or listen into this message from the Roots Community Church. Our prayer is always that God will use it to draw you closer to Himself and deepen your love for Jesus Christ. And if you're new here, consider subscribing to keep up with all of our great content. Thanks again for checking out this message. We pray it's a blessing to you.
So welcome to the Roots Community Church, where it's all about Jesus as we go, as we group, as we gather, and we are in a series simply called Nehemiah. And we're going through the book of Nehemiah. We're in Nehemiah chapter 6 today, so if you have a Bible with you, you can start turning there now. But I'm going to pray, and then we're going to jump right in. God, we thank you. We thank you for your great love for us, that you draw us to yourself, reveal yourself to us in Christ Jesus, and save us through Jesus. And so, God, we just ask that right now you would do a work in us, that you would transform our hearts and our minds and our lives completely. In Jesus' name, amen. So the book of Nehemiah has been fun so far. I think it's an awesome hero story, and apparently you at least think it's interesting enough to come back, so I'm grateful for that. I'm not going to ask, but some of you are probably normally 9 o'clock people, and today you needed the extra hour. But we have been marching through the book of Nehemiah. I won't do a full recap because it's taken me weeks to get here and it would take too long. But Nehemiah is this guy that has a heart for God, His presence, His people, and where God would dwell and His purposes and plans. And so we've seen him do what's necessary to glorify God, even against fear, against enemies, against pushback. And last week we saw that inside of the camp, inside of God's covenant people, there were some that were oppressing others and some that were in a bad spot and were poor. And so Nehemiah had to confront that and talked of using his own resources to bless others. And today, we'll get into chapter 6. And I just want to have you write down as a title, God's work can't be stopped. God's work can't be stopped. You or I could be stopped. In fact, God is constantly in the business of keeping the message going, even though He buries the messenger. I know it's just kind of a daunting way to start the message. You're going to die someday, but God will keep doing what He does. But that God's missions and plan will not stop. It'll continue to press on because He's the one pushing it forward. And too often, I think we ask God to get on our plan that we've come up with instead of realizing the greatest thing we could give our life to is being on the unstoppable mission of God. And so today, we're going to look at people being on His mission and that others will come against it. There's enemies against the fulfillment of His plans and purposes, but that following after God, they see success, and it is amazing. So the first point in Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 1 through 4 is kind of a long one, but you should write it down. Be too busy doing God's great work to be distracted by the enemy's schemes. I think oftentimes we're distracted because we're not busy doing the right stuff. And so we're too easily caught up with the schemes of the enemy. And we'll get into that. There's a real enemy. Sometimes we see it, the enemy's plans play out through people in our lives, but the enemy at the end of the day is the devil, that is the adversary fighting against the purposes and plans of God for us personally and for the church at large as the gospel is being preached and people are being saved. That there really is pushback to who we are and what we're about as God's people. And we see a representation of that in this story in Nehemiah chapter 6. And so in chapter 6, it starts off, when word came to Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem the Arab, so we've met these people already before, and the rest of our enemies. So if you haven't been here, Nehemiah is building up this wall around Jerusalem because the people are in disgrace. God's people are vulnerable and too easily accessible, and it's not a good space for them. And so Nehemiah has on his heart, God put it on his heart to build up the wall so that they can worship God freely inside of that space. And so there's these enemies to that plan, and here's some of them again, Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies, that I had rebuilt the wall. So word came to them, just to put this out there. Your enemies are listening for your successes. Your enemies probably pay more attention to you than people that are just average with you, because they're concerned, but not in a good way. That I had rebuilt the wall, and not a gap was left in it. And then he wants to clarify, though up to that time I had not set the doors and the gates. So the wall is to its full height all the way around the city, and there's these gate spots that need doors put in. And so the wall is finished, but the doors aren't there. Sanballat and Geshem sent me this message. Come, let us meet together in one of the villages on the plain of Ono. But they were scheming to harm me. So they realized at this point, okay, we've tried to stir some things up and it didn't really work. We've tried to say we're going to come in. We had this plan to attack them, and he heard of the plan. And so maybe if we can get Nehemiah out of there, maybe if we can get him away from what he's doing right now, we can have success in stopping what he's up to for God's people. And so they want to get him out of there so that they can deal with him away from the wall, away from all the people, and they're scheming to harm him. Seems pretty aggressive language. I don't know if you have people in your life scheming, but it's planning the harm. Think about that for a second. Let's be real. Most people don't even plan their own life. But to sit around with other people and go like, how could we devise a plan for the harm of this person, because he's leading God's people to secure and establish this place for God's dwelling and for his worship. And I love, let's go back one. I just want to remind you of something. When it says scheming to harm me, again, you might not know of anyone specifically in your life, but there is someone scheming to harm you at all times. In Ephesians chapter 6, it says, finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. How crazy is that? The devil's scheming. He makes plans for our demise. That he fights against God's purposes, plans, and his mission being pushed forward, which means he fights against God's people that God is using to do so. And that he would scheme. And that the Bible would say that there would be evil days for us, that there are days where it just seems as though we're singled out. And so in Ephesians 6 there, it's saying, prepare yourself, because there's another one that's preparing to try to take you out. And that day might be today, so be ready today. So even if you can't identify people, there is an adversary scheming against you that will oftentimes use people to come against you. So check this out, though. So his response, so I sent messengers to them with this reply. This is so good. I am carrying on a great project or a great work and cannot go down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and go down to you? That's pretty straightforward and hardcore. I love it. He just told them, what I'm doing is more important than you. Like what I'm up to is more important than the meeting that you're inviting me to. I don't know if you've experienced that before. But following after Jesus, using your gifts and talents to serve him, or your resources to give generously towards pushing forth the gospel, not everybody understands. And I can think back with some of my own family, not my parents, they're here, they're awesome. But some of my own family, because of like holidays and different gatherings or birthday parties, when God grabbed my heart at a young age, and somewhere in my teenage years, I really started feeling that I should serve him with what he had given me. And so I would prioritize serving when there was a need to be served. And so I spend a lot of time either doing Young Life out and about in the community or being at the church, serving in a youth capacity or some other capacity. If I'm being real, I've served in like every capacity in the church. I've run a choir. I've cleaned. I've run ushers ministries, parking lot ministries, assimilation. I've run a database. It was like a cheese grater to the face every time I looked at it on the computer. Some of you love that kind of stuff. God has blessed you in a different way than me. And I am grateful that we are a part of the same body with different functions. But what would happen is sometimes not all of it would be, well, where's Russ? Because cousins and family could show up somewhere and I wouldn't be there. And I understood what the message might be putting out there, but it was a message similar to this, that the work that I'm doing, like I love you guys, but the work that I'm doing, like what I get to spend my life doing, I'm not coming to a birthday party on a Sunday. Because I'm going to be serving. And it's not because I don't like cake. Or like you, it's that I'm serving, and it would happen on Wednesday nights, and maybe on a Saturday night, and a Sunday, or maybe a Sunday night, or a holiday, Easter. Oh, well, my church has like 5 services that day, so I'm going to be serving at all of them. So I'm not going to make it to a brunch. But if you want to do something late in the afternoon, like the evening, flashlight, Easter egg hunt, I'll be there. Christmas Eve. Hey, I'm sorry, I know those are some traditions, but what I get to do in serving God has priority for me. And not everybody always understands that. And it has to come out of a deep conviction even in yourself. Because if others are forcing it on you, then you won't even understand the ask. But what we see here is that he understands that what he's doing, the purpose, the mission, the plan that needs to be accomplished is a great work, and it would not be right for him to leave it to go meet with somebody somewhere else that had nothing to do with what he was focusing on. I love his response. The work I'm doing is too great. 4 times they sent me the same message because they can't get a clue. And each time I gave them the same answer. This is great. Be too busy doing God's great work to be distracted by the enemy's schemes. Oftentimes I think we fall into sin because we're busy doing nothing. Like what if in that moment you could go, no, temptation, I got some Jesus stuff to do. Instead of doing that. Too busy doing God's great work to be distracted by the enemy's schemes. My next point is don't let fake news stop real plans. Then the 5th time, Sanballat sent his aide to me with the same message. And in his hand was an unsealed letter. So that might not seem like a big deal. It might seem like, okay, the messenger comes with the same message again, okay, and he's got another letter, and this one's unsealed. So it doesn't sound very official because it's unsealed. Like it seems more official that it would be sealed. But what you need to understand is that a lot of the translators actually say it's not unsealed letter, but it's open letter. That he sent him with an open letter. That means, hey, we can't get Nehemiah to come just with these letters we keep giving him, but maybe this open letter that could be read in front of other people might influence that to happen. So if we can't just get you, maybe we can get others around you and get them to push you into this. In which was written, it is reported among the nations, and Geshem says it is true, that you and the Jews are plotting to revolt, and therefore you are building the wall. Moreover, according to these reports, you are about to become their king, and have even appointed prophets to make this proclamation about you in Jerusalem. There is a king in Judah. Now this report will get back to the king, so come, let us meet together. They're trying to pressure him. It's not good to be on the bad side of the king. You don't want to do that, so you better come meet with us because there's some bad reports out there. Now, he knows better than that. He came from the king. Like the king's the one that said he could go do what he's doing. He knows he's not going there to be king. He's the cupbearer to the king, and he has a plan to return to him. And so he knows that this isn't real, but listen, that doesn't mean that it can't influence the people around him and start putting doubt and fear in those around him, even though he's strong. And again, I love his response. Nehemiah's my guy. Like, I like him. I send him this reply. Nothing like what you are saying is happening. You're just making it up out of your head. So it's great. He goes, hey, these people are reporting it. This other guy that's also your enemy, he says it's true. And Nehemiah's like, fake news. You're just making that up. You made it up in your own head. And that he wouldn't be distracted even when they tried to bring influence of other people around to get him distracted. Fight the fright with prayer. If we're being honest, all of us have a bit of fear of man. We do. In fact, this series has been a look at what can happen when God's people, his covenant community, are unified on his mission, and he works through them to fulfill his plan. Like the miraculous speed and time. We're going to see it today. The amazing things that can happen, the outcomes that can happen when all of God's people are unified on his purposes and plans, dependent on his strength for success. So when we think of something like the Great Commission, make disciples of all nations, right? Go, therefore go and make disciples of all nations. That's an evangelistic call to go to people that haven't heard about Jesus or that aren't following Jesus or that are purposely rebellious to God and to declare them the truths of the gospel. And when we think of how many people don't follow Jesus, it's a huge number, and it's very daunting when you read that and think of it on a personal level. You go like, okay, there's like 7 billion people, like over 2 say they're Christian, but realistically, once you say like, is the Bible the authority? Is Jesus the only way? That number shrinks really fast. And so when you think through that, it can be pretty heavy. In fact, if you think of just in our own community, if you thought, okay, how many people have not put a saving faith in Jesus Christ and right now are on a trajectory to hell? It's daunting if you're by yourself. But if we understand that we do this together, if all of us decided that it was a real mission worthy of our best effort to be done with each other, unified for that cause, tell me what the church of God couldn't do. You can't, because I'll refute it. Because we'll look at these stories in the Bible, and we'll remember that me by myself, I can't reach that many people, but just the people in this room, if everybody every day said, who am I going to tell about Jesus, we could impact this community this week. And so it's a matter of understanding that, you know what stops us though? Fear of man. I don't think it's just laziness. I don't think it's just not wanting to. We all have a conviction. When I'm talking to you about this right now, you get excited because you have put your faith in Jesus and the Holy Spirit lives in you. But what stops us though is our flesh. What stops us is we get frightened. There really is an enemy, and his goal is he knows that if he just gives us a little bit of fear, we won't fulfill the plans, purposes, and mission of our mighty God. Tries to frighten us. Look at this. They try to frighten Nehemiah and the people. They were all trying to frighten us, thinking their hands will get too weak for the work and it will not be completed. But I prayed. I love Nehemiah. Nehemiah regularly throughout the text, something comes against him and he prays on the spot. And so people go, they're trying to frighten them, thinking their hands will get too weak. And he says, but I prayed, now strengthen my hands. That his response to exactly what they said is a prayer about that thing. And I think that's good because sometimes we just need to do that. So that we go like, oh man, things around me, people's sin has affected me, and it's attempting to break my heart. God, heal my heart and keep me in your hands. God, the work that I'm doing is making me tired. God, give me strength that is beyond my own. God, the chaos of things around me are making it hard for me to focus. God, give me peace and focus and clarity. Because we can see, we can identify. He identifies, this is where they're coming at me, so he can purpose his prayers in response to that specifically. Some of you right now can think of those things happening in your life. Pray. Pray specifically about what it is you're wrestling through, you're working through, you're fighting through. That the enemy and the enemies are bringing against you, trying to slow you down and take you out. And remember the power of prayer. That the one you pray to is greater. He's greater than anything that can come against you. Tried to frighten us, but I prayed. Now strengthen my hands. Listen, if they can't stop you, they'll try to discredit you. That's real. You guys are quiet in here. I know you lost 1 hour of sleep. You're going to be okay. I lost it too. If they can't stop you, they'll try to discredit you. Listen, they realize there's no way to stop what Nehemiah's up to, but maybe if we can slander Nehemiah, if we can make others view him in a negative light, then maybe we can stop the progress. Maybe we can stop the influence. That's real. Like if your focus and purpose and going to accomplish what you're doing, and the person that doesn't like what you're doing can't stop you, what they'll do is try to discredit who you are, not just the project you're doing. One day, okay, there's gonna be a lot of names moving forward, and I just wanna roll out now that I'm gonna mess some of them up, and I might just skip some and point to them. One day I went into the house of Shemaiah, son of Deliah, the son of Metabel. Yep, that one. Who was shut in at his home. He said, let us meet in the house of God, inside the temple, and let us close the temple doors because men are coming to kill you. By night, they're coming to kill you. It seems like a good thing. If he knows that Nehemiah is under direct threat and he's trying to let him know, hey, there's a place you can hide, it seems as though it's a good thing, but what we need to understand is it's not. He's trying to get him to run and hide. He's the leader of these people, and he's trying to get him to run and hide. Not only that, but it's understood that he's asking him to go into a place of the temple that only priests can go to go hide. That Nehemiah is not allowed to be in, and that he has no reason to be in as the leader, that he would run and hide. Watch this. I love Nehemiah's response. But I said, should a man like me run away? Or should someone like me go into the temple to save his life? I will not go. Listen to this response. Nehemiah is like, hey, some other people might go do that. But should a man like me run away? He understands that he is a leader among these people. They're looking to him for strength. They're trying to, the enemies are trying to frighten everyone there. If you're worried about your people being scared and then you go and run and hide by yourself in the temple, they're gonna be scared. But if you can stand up and say, that's not who I am, and you can have courage, Nehemiah is courageous, and all of us could learn some things and grow in our courage about doing God's mission, his purposes and his plans. I will not go. I realized that God had not sent him, but that he had prophesied against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. He'd been paid to prophesy. That's a scary concept. Prophets in the Bible are held very accountable. Very accountable. You're a messenger, a mouthpiece for God. If you do anything short of that, you're killed for being a false prophet. But for a few bucks, he's willing to be had. And the reason is, he had been hired to intimidate me, right? Be afraid, they're coming to kill you. So that I would commit a sin by doing this, and then they would give me a bad name to discredit me. We couldn't take out your project, but maybe we can take out your name. And maybe we can get somebody that has some influence in your life to kind of steer you that direction. And the thing is, even if he wasn't going, so if he was going into a place that only priests could go, it's definitely a sin and would have disgraced his name and he would have been discredited. But even if it wasn't into a place that he, by the law and regulations of the law, couldn't go, it could still be a sin. Because if God has called you clearly and convicted you clearly on what you're supposed to do and you don't, that's missing the mark. That's a sin. And so as he's been called to lead the people in strength, in reestablishing God's dwelling place, his city, and protecting them so they can fully and rightly worship God. He knows that if he goes and hides, it would have been a sin. And then his name gets disgraced and he's discredited. And then it doesn't matter if you built a wall, you lost all your influence. They can't stop you, they'll try to discredit you. So have integrity. Stay in tune with God. Know who's for you, who's not for you. Remember the purpose and plans. Remember who you are. Walk in courage. And I love this. Again, he'll just, during the narrative, all of a sudden just jump into a prayer. Remember Tobiah and Sanballat, my God, because of what they have done. Remember also the prophet, Noadiah, and how she's a prophetess, and the rest of the prophets have been trying to intimidate me. They don't give examples of how long this was or how many people it was. But it sounds like several prophets are speaking to him in a way that would intimidate him from continuing God's purposes and plans. Clearly, they're not prophets from God. They're prophets that are worried about doing the right thing by certain men. And so they're more worried about what they say and how it benefits the right people than how it is in fear of God and the right thing before this leader. And so he's just real. Nehemiah, when he prays for justice. God, if they're doing great, bless them. If they're doing these kind of things, God, don't forget about it. I see you, Nehemiah. I get it. The next point, write it down, underline it, circle it, put a square around it. I mean, none of you are writing. It's fun for me to just say that stuff, though. Do something awesome that God gets the credit for. Why not? I mean, I think that we forget how powerful and amazing and mighty our God is. How great his purposes and plans and will and call. That he calls us to things beyond our own strength and ability and wisdom. So that he would be the one that is praised and worshiped and glorified through our lives. Do something awesome. Why not? Like, we have one life to live. We'll be poured out for something. Why not have it be for the greatest cause and a part of the greatest mission that could ever be lived? As his plans are unstoppable. His mission is unstoppable. And we're going to pour our lives out for something. You're going to. You're going to look back at the end of your life and realize, I gave my life for something. Let it be the greatest thing you could give it for. Let it be for something that is more than temporal, but that is eternal. And realize what can be accomplished when all of us have the idea of doing something great. And I'm not going to identify for you what awesome is, because I'm not going to put my call on you or your call on the person next to you. But that it's he's calling you to follow after him with an obedience that is difficult. It's completely humbling yourself and submitting yourself to him. It's relying on his strength and power and wisdom to work in you and through you to capitalize on every gift and skill and ability and resource that he's ever blessed you with, realizing he gave them to you to glorify him. Why not do something awesome? It could be awesome for one person. It could be awesome on a large scale. But I'll tell you what's awesome. What is awesome is knowing what it means to walk with God, completely submitted to his purposes and plans, joyfully fulfilling his great mission on the earth as he would work through people like me and you to accomplish the greatest mission the world has ever seen. The saving of people to himself. That he would work through us. How amazing is that? I'm glad he's smarter than all of us. Because come on, man, look around the room. We're not picking us. I don't mean that any kind of way bad. I'm just saying that God chooses out of his great love to use ordinary people to do phenomenal and miraculous things. Watch this. So the wall was completed on the 25th of Elul in 52 days. 52 days? This wall has been decimated for decade on 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 decade. It keeps going. They've been in disgrace. They've been in this bad place. People have seen them and known that and thought, oh, look, they're just weak and they can't do anything and they're by themselves and their God is probably without their God or he's just weak. But in 52 days, people that were purposed and focused were able to do this mighty thing by God's strength. When all our enemies heard about this, all the surrounding nations were afraid and lost their self-confidence or their self-esteem because they realized that this work had been done with the help of our God. So everybody had looked down on them. Everybody had kind of looked down their noses thinking, we're a stronger nation than them, we're a stronger people than them. Look, they're disgraced, they're broken down, they're vulnerable, they're in a bad place. And now all of a sudden their confidence is zapped, like it's gone. Because their confidence was in their own position. But when they saw that God's people, when they're united on his purposes and plans, can do more than they could ever do on their own, and how phenomenal God is, they saw this happen and went like, oh, this is a problem. Oh, like we thought we could look down our nose at them. We thought we could have self-esteem or have pride or boast about how superior we were to God and his people. But now that we see what it looks like for his people to be helped by him, we're frightened because he's powerful. And he provides and loves and cares for and is with his people. I can't wait. Next week, if you're reading ahead of me at all in Nehemiah, you probably look, or you will look at chapter 7 of Nehemiah and go like, what is he going to do with this? Because it's just a list of everybody. It's just like taking attendance for this room. Like it's just, don't worry, we're going to blaze through that because when we get to chapter 8, it starts to shift gears. Where these first chapters have been about rebuilding the wall and that area and their confidence. The next ones are rebuilding the people in their walk and worship of God. And so some just cool things are going to happen that I'm really excited to preach through. But before I start preaching next week today, let me finish this. This work had been done with the help of our God. So there's this awesome thing that had happened, and God gets all the credit, and the people are realizing not that Israel is awesome, but that Israel's God is awesome. And as the story continues, I just wrote, watch out for traitors in the camp. So these amazing things are happening. People are getting nervous outside. The wall is built up. It's finished in 52 days. And now, even though the wall is finished, there's still problems. Watch. Also in those days, the nobles of Judah, right? They should be people that are excited that the people are safe now. We're sending many letters to Tobiah. Remember that name? That's one of the enemies. And replies from Tobiah kept coming to them. They're communicating with the enemy. This is one of the people that wants Nehemiah out of the way. It's one of the people that's trying to intimidate him, scare him. And there's people among the nobles that he's doing this for that are communicating back and forth. They're supposed to be with him, and they're traitors. So he thinks that he has, I don't know if he thinks this, he has this group of people that are supposed to be the nobles that the people look up to, and instead of them leading the charge and following after God completely, they're traitors. They're in communication with the enemy. For many in Judah were under oath to him, since he was son-in-law to Shechaniah, son of Era, and his son, Jehohanan, that guy, had married the daughter of Meshullam, son of Berechiah. Moreover, they kept reporting to me his good deeds and then telling him what I said. Could you imagine this? Hold on a second. You've been trying to do God's purposes and plans, pushing forward his mission, keeping people inspired, getting them where they need to go, having discernment about what to do. You have enemies on all sides. You have people among you that are oppressing each other. All these enemies are coming against you, and now you realize that the nobles inside are getting letters back and forth from one of your main enemies, and they're trying to tell you how good he is. Like he's sending you a letter to scare you, they're telling you how good he is. That's quite a predicament. And we saw because of the marriages, because of the oaths they took, the issue here is their loyalty to some people is greater than their loyalty to God's plans and purposes. And it makes them traitors from the inside. Watch who you're loyal to. And those that are with you, make sure they're most loyal to God. There's traitors. And now you got to hear how good this enemy is. So you got to listen to. Someone's trying to smash you, and someone's telling you how great they are. That'll get you stirred up. That'll get you some things going on inside. Moreover, they kept reporting his good deeds and then telling him what I said. And Tobiah sent letters to intimidate me. I can't imagine. Sending other people letters of how great you are so they can tell me, and then sending me letters to intimidate me. Just be careful who you have around. I'm not saying that so you live in a bubble. We're called to walk this out together. We push you towards community groups all the time. And in those groups, I pray that if there is something that comes up, it would be talked about, dealt with, and move forward as believers in grace and in truth. What I'm saying is some of us have friends or people around us whose loyalties are to others outside of where we're at and what we're trying to do. And it might be infecting or affecting what we're trying to accomplish. Pay attention to it. Kind of lastly, and I need the worship team, surround yourself with the right people. Delegate to the right people. Look at this. After the wall had been rebuilt and I had set the doors in place, the gatekeepers, the musicians, the Levites were appointed. So everybody now is kind of have these roles and these jobs because we're secure. I put in charge of Jerusalem my brother Hanani. This is cool. Hanani in Nehemiah chapter 1, I don't know if you remember, but Nehemiah is the cupbearer to the king, King Artaxerxes, in Susa, the capital of the Persian Empire. And the reason he knows that Jerusalem's not doing well is because Hanani comes with a group of other men. And when asked how Jerusalem is, Hanani tells him, so Hanani, it appears has been back in Jerusalem with him this whole time, helping move this thing forward, and he's loyal. And he's about it, so Nehemiah knows, I can hand this stuff off to the right people. I can entrust it to them because they care for it as much as I do. That's hard. Along with Hananiah. So Hananiah and Hananiah. The commander of the citadel, or your Bible might even say of the castle. Because, this is great. Because he was a man of integrity and feared God more than most people do. What a sentence to describe somebody. He puts him in charge. He's a commander. He has some leadership experience. But the greatest thing is, he was a man of integrity. And feared God more than most people do. Man, we should all want that to be what describes us. What a great line. That somebody would say who you are. Oh yeah, you know him. You know her. She's a woman of integrity. And she fears God more than most people do. He's a man of integrity and fears God more than most people do. What an awesome line. What a line that we should all strive to have be said about us. Not because we put on a show or put on a face or put on a front, but because, integrity wouldn't allow for that anyways. Integrity means that we're pure all the way through. It's the same all the way through. Think about that for yourself. I think about that. Man, I want my boys to be known as that. Someday when my boys get introduced to whoever their future wife is, I hope that they would be known as, oh yeah, Caleb, Eli, yeah. Those are men of integrity. And they fear God more than most people. I think your employers. Now, listen, they might not say like, oh, you fear God more than most people, because who knows if they fear God. But what an awesome line. That you walk with integrity. If you fear God more than you fear man, you do right things regardless of situation. You're not influenced by just the people around you, the things going on around you, but you, in those moments, you're in awe of God and revere God and want to glorify God in the actions that are before you. I think it'd be great for all of us to be mindful of, is this something that could be said of me, or what needs to shift? What needs to change so that that statement could be true of me? That I wouldn't be shocked if someone said it, but it'd be in alignment with who I am. God's called us to amazing things. He's put us on his purposes and plans, his unstoppable mission. I just want to implore you to get on God's unstoppable mission along with others on his mission and watch what God does through you. What can be accomplished with God? Well, here's the deal. What can't be? The answer is nothing. There's nothing that can't be accomplished with God. If you've been here for a while, you've heard me tell this story. I talked about it first service, and when we first started the church, we're like not even a year in, I don't think. I still feel like this today. We had started the church in the annexed hallway of the satellite campus of a community college. We're kind of a big deal. The annexed hallway of the satellite campus of a community college. And God had blessed it. And we got into a space where I was like, what are we going to do? This is not a very big space here. And this facility we're in now was becoming available, and soon after. And I remember just feeling in over my head. And sometimes you just have to go like, God, I can't believe how you would use me for whatever you're up to. And I was at the park one day, Brianna and I, and at that point we only had Caleb. He was probably 2-ish, maybe, yeah, somewhere around there. And we were at the park, and we were running around, and he loved when we would hold each other's hands. He said, Dad, hold my hands, let's run. And we're running, and his feet are barely touching because I'm running. And we stop, and he looks up to me, and he goes, Dad, I'm so fast. And I'm just like glowing inside and happy and realizing that he's not the fast one. And right away, God impressed so heavily on my heart, like, that's you. Like when you feel overwhelmed, it's because you're running at a speed you can't run by yourself. And you thinking that you're clinging onto my hands? You know who was holding whose hand when my son is 2? I'm not like this and just saying like, well, if you bite it, you bite it. I have a grip and a grasp. And the speed at which he's running is determined by the speed in which I'm running. And deciding is a good speed for him to run. And it's faster than he's able to do, so he gets to, he's 2, so God was not saying that I should go like, God, look how fast I am, but the opposite, that I would recognize that there's somebody else I'm holding on to. In fact, he's holding on to me. And that anything that seemed beyond me is because it is beyond me. And it's so that he would get credit and that he would be glorified, that he would be worshiped, that he would be praised. And that all of us have been called to those types of spaces where we hold on with all of our might and he holds on stronger than we do. That we run with all of our speed and we run faster than we can even keep up. And it's that he would get the glory. And think about this. As every one of us runs his great mission out, his unstoppable plan and mission, what does it look like when all of us do? When every one of us understands that responsibility, when every one of us takes our spot on the wall, when every part of the body is fully functioning, the impact it has in the community at large as people hear about Jesus and see the light and have a revelation of the saving power of Jesus Christ. See the beauty of the body that sacrifices and humbles itself to each other, that gives of self for the good of others to the glory of God. What a witness. What a witness. As we bear each other's burdens, as we're there for each other, you for me and me for you and for each other. The things that can be accomplished are things that we can only be in awe over, that would inspire awe in us to God, and that others would even see and realize God is helping them. God is at work in them. Let it be who we are. Let it be what we're about. Can you stand to your feet?